Hello, this is Dr. Kevin Connors, and this is the first video in the series of Understanding Your DNA, a newer series that I just putting together. And we're going to speak about your SNP report, your single nucleotide polymorphism genetic report that you're receiving. So this is really for those people that did a 23andMe or that are thinking about doing a 23andMe genetic test and are having us analyze that test, putting it through our software and giving you some recommendations from a nutritional, nutraceutical, and possibly dietary perspective on the next steps to take. So the initial part of your genetics that we look at is your gut health. There's much to be said on our website on gut health because the health of your intestinal tract really is a telltale sign for the health of your entire body. Even if you say, well, I'm not having any gut problems. I have a normal bowel movement and never have any tummy aches and I can digest anything and I got a stomach like a that can break down anything and have no issues. Really, you could have a whole bunch of inflammation going on. You could have a bunch of problems with leaky gut issues, not even know it, not have any gut symptoms whatsoever. You've heard me say before that the health of your gut equals the health of your brain and the health of the rest of the body. Any inflammation in the gut equals inflammation in the brain and inflammation in the rest of the body. And right now we want to take a look at the genetics of that and how that plays a part. So that's what we're going to discuss right now. So I trust that you've done your 23andMe, and maybe after this presentation, if you haven't, you may choose to do your 23andMe. Again, that is a genetic profile, and from 23andMe you will get a bunch of fun little data back, like I'm 12% Germanic and 7% French and things, but I don't really care about that. We want to look at your raw data, put it into our software, and really see what's going on from a genetic perspective. Your diet is so important. What goes on in your intestinal tract is so important, and literally on a weekly basis, they're coming out with new studies speaking about the importance of the health of your microbiota. That is really, really important. Now, genetics is not the only way that we look at that. So understand, we don't solely look at your genetics to understand your gut health, and I'll speak a little bit about that as we go along. But your immune system, you talk about somebody with cancer or somebody with Lyme disease, your immune system is made up primarily having to do with your microbiota in the gut. So the health of that is so important when you're dealing with more chronic conditions. So variants that impact gut health and digestion is what we're going to talk about. So this is important when we look at your genetics. So let's dive into this. The first genes that you're going to see on my report that you'll receive is your HLA genes. Now, I do have to give you a little bit of data. Now, we are updating this genetic report literally on a weekly basis. So I cannot keep up. You know, some of my slides, you may say, well, my report looks a little bit different. That's because it's updated from the time that I did this presentation. So just bear with me, and there may even be more data on your report. So the purpose of me doing this presentation is for you to look at your report and understand based upon with the genetic defects and variants that you have versus what I'm explaining what they mean here. So you're going to have to do your homework. You're not going to have me one-on-one explaining each one of these genes to you. It's just not humanly possible for me to do that. That's why I created these videos. So when you look at your report, page 1 or 2 or 3, depending on what your report looks like, the first genes that you're going to see most likely are these HLA genes. Now these HLA genes are for gluten sensitivity, and these MCM6 genes are for lactose ability to digest dairy and lactose. That's the sugar in dairy. So a person with this genetic profile, as you see on this slide, they have a 2 on this bottom HLA gene, which means they have a double allele defect of that gene. Can't get any worse than that. They have a 1 in that third one down of the HLA genes. Does this mean that they're gluten sensitive? Does this mean that they should stay off gluten? The answer is no, it doesn't. You don't, at least in my book, we don't make the decision whether the person should be gluten-free or dairy-free based upon their genes. Now, it does give us some clues. If a person has any HLA genes here, any defects, so if all of these are blank after each one of these genes, then the chance that they will have celiac is less. The chance that they will have full-blown celiac disease or a high sensitivity to gluten is less, but it does not mean that it's not going to be there. So we want to look at other tests for that. The MCM6 gene right here talks about your ability to digest lactose. When you have a 2 there, like this person does, they actually can digest lactose better. And I may have said that incorrectly on another slide presentation, so I apologize. But this person has the ability to digest lactose better. But understand, I wouldn't make the decision that the person should be dairy-free or gluten-free based upon this genetic picture. Because, for instance, this MCM6 gene has to do with lactose. People that have dairy sensitivities, it really isn't due to the lactose, it's due to the casein in the dairy. So what you want to do is test for casein issues, whether the person has antibody to the peptides, that is the particles of the casein protein, if they have antibodies in their blood or in their gut to those casein peptides. The same thing with gluten. Do they have antibodies to the gliadin, that's the protein in gluten, to the gliadin peptides, that's the particles of that protein. So it gets much more complicated than simply genetics when you're talking about inflammatory food things going on in the gut. So don't make the decision whether you should be gluten-free based upon your genes or whether you should be dairy-free based upon your genes. Did I make that very clear? This only tells you whether you have a greater risk of having celiac or gluten intolerance. It doesn't tell you if you do. So the other test that I would run on a patient in our office is a test from a Cyrex lab. So if you have a local doctor that you work with, a functional medicine doctor, that would be the most accurate test currently, at the time of this taping, to test for food intolerances. And an intolerance has to do with your immune system, not your genetics per se. So it's an immune function. You've created antibodies to particles of food, typically protein particles, which are called peptides. You've created antibodies against those, which you shouldn't have. And it's typically because a person has leaky gut. And leaky gut is where you have damaged gut cells, typically due to other inflammatory processes going on in the gut, like eating genetically modified foods, consuming a lot of toxins, etc. That damages the gut cells. The opening between the cells is larger than it should have been. Particles of food, typically peptides, that should never have gotten across the gut border are going across the gut border, and your blood, your immune system in the blood is going, what in the heck is that thing? Let's kill it. So it tries to kill it, and of course it's not a living organism, and your body then, your immune system, your B cells, make antibodies against that thing, and now you have circulated antibodies against food particles. And so now every time you eat that food particle, you have this ramped up inflammation because your immune system is trying to kill it. So that is not a good thing, and that causes more damage in the gut because you've got this constant ramped up inflammation in the gut. And remember, inflammation in the gut equals inflammation in the body. So we have to look at food as a causative piece of every disease. You have to. You have to look at diet as a causative piece of every disease. For someone to say that your cancer, oh, that's not caused by diet, you're crazy. They're crazy. There's so much information out there that speaks to that. Now, is food the cause of a cancer? I doubt it. But is food causing more inflammation that can cause ill health in the body? Absolutely. So diet has to do with everything. So if you're not willing to make dietary changes and dietary restrictions, and you're just going to do your DNA, and you're just going to, take my advice as far as what's based upon your SNPs, your genetic defects here, you're going to miss a big piece of getting healthy. So don't expect that you're just going to address your genes and you're going to get healthy. The purpose of this whole presentation and the purpose of me getting into genetics is that it can be a missing link for other things, but you cannot take one piece and ignore the others. So diet is extremely important. Now, we're not doing this test on you, this test that's shown on the screen right here. We're going over your genetics, but I'm hounding on this point because diet is so important. And if you have ill health and you've never investigated whether you have inflammatory processes going on in your gut and going on in your body that is caused from antibodies that your immune system has made to different food particles, and you're continuing to eat those food particles, you're just going to be beating your head against the wall trying to get better. So I'd highly recommend that you find a functional medicine doctor that can do these Cyrex tests. If you don't, we do these on our full patients, so you can call our office and I'll give you some information about that, but you have to be a patient of ours, not just a genetic consult of ours. Okay, so the genetic test also gives you things like peanut allergy. Does this mean if a person has 2 1s here that they should be off peanuts? Well, in my perspective, probably everybody should be off peanuts. Pick a different type of nut to eat. Peanuts have a lot of mycotoxins, especially if you have Lyme disease or mold issues. You should not be eating peanuts anyhow. This also gives you information about caffeine consumption. Are you a good caffeine metabolizer? It doesn't give you the right to drink 5 pots of coffee, but if you actually have a defect here, you metabolize caffeine better. That's great, but still doesn't mean it's good for you, doesn't mean it's good for your adrenal glands, doesn't mean it's good for the rest of your body, but you do at least metabolize it better. People that have blanks down here at this one on the bottom here, this caffeine metabolization, really shouldn't be drinking coffee at all. So if you have a 2, you could drink some coffee. That's what I tell my patients. You could drink some coffee, but within reason. It also depends on if the person has adrenal fatigue or not, because then I won't let them drink coffee either. The FUT2 genes, this is probably, arguably, one of the most important genes right here of your whole genetic profile. Why? Because all ill health starts in the gut. You could argue that really, because inflammation starts in the gut, so many diseases begin in the gut. So the FUT2 genes, what these do is these make the enzymes in order to help heal the epithelial cells of the gut so that you can make butyrate and you can feed the intestinal cells so that you can hold a microbiota. So your microbiota is your flora of your gut, the symbiotic organisms that are living in your gut that are helping you absorb nutrients, helping you stimulate immune function, keeping you safe from pathogens, and keeping inflammation down in your body. They're your immune regulatory function. If you don't have that healthy microbiota, your T regulator cells, that's a part of your immune system that keeps your immune system balanced, that is out of balance, and you're going to develop autoimmune diseases, you're going to develop diseases. So the FUT2 genes are so important. This person has a really good picture here. because the 6 most important FUT2 genes, when we look at these genes, like you see FUT2 on the top, and there's a bunch of genes underneath. So I refer to those as the family of genes. These are the family of FUT2 genes. So there's a bunch of different FUT2 genes. There's going to be some that are more weighted, meaning that the studies have shown, at least up to this point, that they are the most important of all the FUT2 genes. In this case, it's the top 3 and the bottom 3. This person doesn't have any defects in the top 3, doesn't have any defects in the bottom 3. Woohoo! This is the time for celebration. They should go dance an Irish jig in the street, because this person, if they have to take antibiotics for a really bad infection, let's say, they're going to damage their microbiota. But this person, because they have no FUT2 gene defects in the most important ones, that microbiota is going to heal quite quickly. So here's a picture right here, a genetic picture of a person who, yeah, I had acute Lyme disease. I had to take 30 days of doxycycline. My gut was really bothering me. It affected my bowel movement, but I took probiotics. In a couple of weeks, I was back to normal. Versus another person, which might be you as you're looking at your genetic profile. You have, 3 1s in the top 3 and 3 1s in the bottom 2. The bottom 3, or you have 2s, some 2s in there, and you're like, whoa, well, maybe that's why it's taken me so long to recover from X, Y, or Z. I took antibiotics for something. When I was a kid, I was on antibiotics for ear infections all the time. Maybe that was a prerequisite for my current state of disease. My gut never really got back healthy again. And you're really thinking correctly there. FUT2 gene defects cause all sorts of problems. Now there's another gene defect that I didn't get in the slide presentation that is in that's the BCMI gene that's in your report right now, because it's just been updated, that has to do with vitamin A conversion. So why do we have that under the gut function genes? Because vitamin A is so crucial to heal your epithelial cells. So your gut cavity is made up of epithelial cells. Epithelial cells come from a histological cell line, your epithelial cell line, that make up that coat your intestinal tract, that actually make up all the cells that coat all your inner cavities. So your throat and your mouth is all epithelial cells. Actually, your skin is epithelial cells. Actually, the cells that line your blood vessels are specialized epithelial cells that we call endothelial cells. They come from that epithelial cell line. They require vitamin A in order to heal. If you have a lot of those defects, and you can look at your report, I don't have a slide on it. If you have a lot of those defects, we put them in the gut health category because that's so important to help your gut heal. So that suggests an increased need for vitamin A for you. And I'll tell you, we as Americans, we're deficient in a lot of these nutrients because they're not in our food, or we're eating prepared foods, or we're eating foods that have synthetic supplementation that are enriching the foods. And because we're deficient in those, we're not going to heal as well. So you can start to get a picture of your health when you look at your genes. I have a lot of those defects. I have a lot of FUT2 gene defects. I haven't really investigated my gut issues and food issues because I don't really have tummy problems. I have normal digestion. But if you have any systemic disease, whether it's brain issues, ADD, ADHD, depression, sadness, anxiety, unclear thinking, to chronic Lyme or cancer, you have to look at the food piece. You have to look at the digestion piece. Your microbiota, I cannot hound on this enough. Your microbiota is so important. The other genes that we put in this same digestive category has to do with histamine. Now, these genes, the ABP1 genes, have to do with histamine breakdown. How does histamine get broken down in the gut? I have a whole page on my website with a ton of data on histamine. Make sure you look at that, especially if you have these gene defects that we're going to talk about in the next couple slides here. Histamine is a immune function chemical. It's needed in your body. Remember, all the chemicals in your body, there's really no bad guys and good guys. Anything can be a bad guy if it's out of balance. Things are good guys if they're in balance. Histamine is a good guy if it's in balance. If we have the ability to break down histamines from our food, that's this ABP1 gene. So this particular person has a 2 here, so they have some issues with the ability to break down histamine. So they might be better to go to at least address the amount of histamine foods they're eating. And on our website, we have a list of histamine foods, so you can look at that. Now, understand, most foods have some histamine in it. The older the food is, the more aged the food is, the more histamines it's going to have. Eggs, for instance, chicken eggs have histamine in it. If you get eggs from your own chicken coop and eat them today, they're going to have far less histamine in it than if you bought them at the grocery store and they sat in your refrigerator for 2 weeks and then you ate them. It's going to have way more histamines in it. Meat has some histamines in it. Aged meat has a lot of histamines in it. Nuts have histamines in it. Fermented foods have a lot of histamines in it. So people that have a lot of ABP1 genes, maybe worse than this, even this person, if they have a serious disease like cancer, I'll say, we got to cut back on your histamines. Even having a 2 there, 1, 2 there out of those 4 genes would still ignite me to say, you have to look at that histamine list. You're never going to zero your histamines. So that's not even the point. But the point is, wow, I eat fermented foods all the time. I thought they were good for you. Yeah, they are good for you. They have a lot of probiotics in them, but they do have a lot of histamines. Please, it's all about balance. It's all about balance. Nothing in life is just cut and dry. If I do this, I'm going to solve my problems. That's not life. You're living in la la land. It's all about balance. So, okay, I have some histamine gene defects, and this person doesn't really have a lot. You're going to see on the next slide. But if I did have a lot, then you really have to think about reducing your histamine load. The ABP1 gene is the gene that makes the enzymes that actually make DAO enzyme that breaks down histamine in your food, so you're not just flooding your body with histamine. This next gene, this HNMT gene, breaks down histamine in the tissues so that you get rid of it. Your immune system actually makes histamine. It has a purpose in an immune response. But when you don't break it down very well, then you have excess histamine and you have symptoms of excess histamine. Stuffy nose, tight chest, heart palpitations, skin irritation, skin rashes, watery eyes, blah, blah, blah. There's a ton of histamine issues, and on our website I list a whole bunch of other things out. But when you do have histamine issues, you got to go, should I take an antihistamine? No, those are not good for you at all. And they have other side effects that I list on this page on our website. But I need to look at my genetics. Do I have the ability to break down histamine really well? And maybe that is an issue. Now, this particular person only has 3 2s in all these genes. I'd say they really probably don't need to watch their histamine unless they're having a lot of high histamine symptoms. But I've seen patients with 1s on almost every one of these and 1s and 2s on almost every one of these. That person absolutely positively needs to watch their histamine, because histamine is increased inflammation. Increased inflammation equals all sorts of symptoms. Tons of brain issues. ADD, ADHD, unclear thinking, cloudiness, anxiety, etc. As histamine breaks down, it breaks down into products that we don't really want to deal with. So HNMT is how we break down histamine in the tissues. If you have a lot of gene defects here, you need to go to our website and download the histamine list, food list, and cut those down to size big time. Histidine breaks down through the path. Actually, histidine breaks down and makes glutamate. Glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter that most people have issues with, and we'll be talking about on another presentation. Causes anxiety, OCD, can't let things go, can't fall asleep at night, doesn't sleep well, etc., etc. So it's broken down through the ABP1 gene, it's broken down through the HNMT gene. Very, very important. If you have defects in there, you're going to have excess histamine. Quite simple. So this is the food list. It's a whole 30 food list of different histamines. The things that are lighter gray, like up on the top, it says seafood and shellfish. Shellfish have a lot of histamine. So if you read the instructions here, read the directions on the list that you can download. Don't try to just read it off the slide, but download this list and put it in your purse so when you go to the store, see eggs are lighter gray. They have a lot of histamine in it. So you're best off getting them organic, pasteurized, right from the chicken. So pastured, I mean not pasteurized, right from the chicken. Store-bought, the older it is, the more histamine it's going to have in there. And you can read this list. And again, you have to understand, you're never going to eliminate histamines in your diet, and that's not even the purpose. So don't go crazy about this. But you just make some different choices. I'm going to decrease my histamine load and see if that makes a difference. Now again, if you're interested in becoming a full patient of ours, then you got to follow the First Steps tab on our website and do a complete case review and decide to become a full patient of ours. That's not what this is for. So please understand, when you did a genetic review with us, it's a different picture. You're not a full patient of ours. You agreed to those 23andMe agreements. You're receiving this video series. You're getting your genetic SNP report. So if you haven't gotten us your 23andMe username and password, make sure you get that to us. And if you haven't gotten your results back, you will get this next piece, that genetic SNP report, when we get your results back. And then your supplement report. So you'll get that too. And again, those are going to be solely, completely, 100% based upon the questionnaire that you send us and your genetics. I can't base it upon that you have cancer or that you have Lyme or that you have anything else. You have to go to your doctor for that. I'm solely doing a supplement report based upon your genetics. So you have to understand that. And I can't take into consideration anything else because I haven't done an examination on you. So let's just be realistic here. So, and then understand, due to our busy schedule here, you can't call the office and ask questions. Like, oh, he said on the supplement report to take this histamine scavenger, and I took it and I got a tummy ache. Should I keep taking it? Well, you're going to have to talk to your local doctor about that. I can only make recommendations based upon your genetic report. And even if I put take 3 a day and you can only handle 1 a day, well, then only take 1 a day. So you have to use your common sense. You got to know that you are a different person than your genetics too, and you have to doctor yourself here, because I'm not your full doctor. So contact your local doctor. If you don't have a local doctor, find one. If you want to use us, go back to that other slide and go back to the first steps. But you have to follow the rules. So please do that. Don't call our office. Don't email us with questions with that, unless you want to go ahead and become a full patient. We have to follow the rules. Okay? So please understand that. This is what you're going to get. This is a supplement report. And this will help you. Again, follow it to the best you can. If you can't do this, or you can't afford those, then pick a couple that as you're going through this presentation, you should come up with your own understanding a little bit. This isn't really rocket science. If you really feel histamine is the worst thing for you right now based upon your genes, and maybe you don't want to do any supplements and you want to just cut out histamine, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just making my best recommendation based upon your genes. So we're limited to that. So you're going to have to doctor yourself and use your doctor locally as well. So I care about you. I only want the best for you, and I'm not trying to sell stuff to you. So please don't get me wrong, but I have to give you my best recommendation. So I hope you understand that. So this was the digestive part of this. I have presentations for, I don't know, 7 or 8 more of these. So watch those. And you know, if you have a lot of gene defects in a certain section, maybe you just want to jump to that. That's fine too. So whatever you want to do. And again, the other thing is that I wrote in the written part of this, I'm not trying to make you all geneticists, and you don't have to think you have to understand all this. But the piece that really appeals to you, and if you're hungry for knowledge, I'm trying to give people that. So utilize it to the best that you can and to the depth that you want. So I appreciate you listening, and thank you very much.